Welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey towards embracing your worthiness and creating extraordinary success? I am your host, Allison Lacusier, a certified professional coach, a professional speaker, and a female founder. As a passionate advocate for women's empowerment, I've dedicated my career to helping individuals like you unlock their true potential, cultivate unwavering confidence, and live a life aligned with their deepest desires. With years of experience in the coaching industry, I've witnessed firsthand the incredible transformation that occurs when we tap into our worthiness and step into our power. Throughout this podcast, I'll be your guide, sharing insights, tools, and strategies to help you navigate the path towards unshakable self-confidence and fulfillment. Drawing from my own journey as a successful business owner, I'll provide you with practical advice, actionable steps, and thought-provoking conversations with industry leaders. From overcoming self-doubt to setting and achieving audacious goals, we'll explore a wide range of topics designed to empower you to embrace your worthiness in every step of your life. Through these engaging interviews and solo episodes, I'll share my experiences, lessons learned, and wisdom gained from our remarkable guests who've achieved remarkable success in their respective fields. So if you're ready to leave self-doubt behind, step into your authenticity, and thrive as the empowered woman that you are, then this podcast is for you. It's time to claim your worth, align with your purpose, and manifest the success you desire. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this empowering adventure. Welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. Welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. My name is Allison Lacusier. I am your host, and I am here with an amazing award-winning doctor, Dr. Parul. Please be welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast.
Thank you, Allison, for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It is such a pleasure having you here. And I'm so excited that this podcast is going to go out at a time where you are doing a lot of amazing things in the world to help other people share awareness and ultimately help people live a more just empowered life with the journey that you've been on. And so today we're going to talk about the journey of grief, of what you went through during COVID, and the mission that you're on today. So let me introduce you. We've had the pleasure of meeting at Vanessa Emerson's event in Arizona earlier this year. And immediately I was like, you need to be on my podcast. You are an amazing person. So Dr. Parul is an award-winning dentist based in New York. Her trajectory in life changed when she lost her younger and only brother to cancer. Now she educates other dentists on risk factors and how to help detect cancer. She has authored several articles as well as a book, Life Interrupted, Dr. Dua's Survival Guide. So again, welcome. And how has your season been these last few months?
It's been really busy. You and I share the connection that we're from Calgary. And I was in Calgary this summer to present at the Alberta Dental Association Wellness Summit. And I actually did a book reading for Manu's book. And it was like a full circle because Manu was asked to speak at that platform back in 2020, just when he was going through the cancer journey. And unfortunately, COVID hit and he couldn't speak. And then his cancer returned, an untimely death. And so to be on that stage, in June, which was his birthday month, reading his words, it was like a full circle. Like the universe kind of answered me back, and that's kind of how I feel with this whole process that's been through. It's connected me to amazing people. It's brought me into these circumstances that I would have never imagined or even thought I would be on this trajectory. And this year has been rather busy. I was in Manitoba and of course at the ADA, Alberta Dental Association. I also was asked to be one of American Dental Association's wellness ambassadors for their second cohort. And later on in October, I'll be inducted into the American College of Dentists. And it all is very overwhelming and rewarding. And it's gratifying to know that, yes, I'm reaching people out. And yes, the work that I'm doing is making a difference. I also worked in the last few months. I've just finished. We organized an oral cancer walk with the Oral Cancer Foundation and our local dental community, the Nassau County Dental Society. We had over 150 participants for our first time doing it, and we raised about $26,000 towards the nonprofit. So it's an amazing turnout, and the weather held up.
Oh my gosh. Wow. One of the reasons why I'm so inspired by you is because you went through something very, very challenging. And like it's one of those things that you might ask yourself, like, why me? Why did this happen to me? You know, how is this fair? And yet you took what you experienced and you put it into helping others like very quickly. And that I see and feel in just all of the work that you're doing. And as you're becoming more like you're building a wave in the industry that I see and feel. And it's all based on this was so traumatizing and so sad and so awful. And that happened to me. And yet I'm going to focus my energy on helping and serving others. And that's not easy. So I would love to hear, like, how did you go from that pain and that suffering of losing your brother during the pandemic, experiencing all that you experienced to I'm now going to focus on others and their well-being.
It was one of the hardest things ever. I don't wish it upon anybody. We experienced the most unimaginable in the worst of the circumstances, under the worst of the conditions. I couldn't fly freely between US and Canada. Just to remind your listeners, I mean, we're talking late 2020 when COVID, pandemic had set in. New York was a major epicenter. Canada had shut borders. You could only travel with the compassion release, and which takes a little while. And it's permission from the government, and it's only valid for a month. So anytime you have to travel, you have to reapply. And even as his passing, I got the news that he was put into hospice and it's his time to go. And I couldn't make it in time. I was a day late just because of PCR testing. But it was immunocompromised. So there were a lot more, there was a lot of legal and issues and just getting to making there on time. So I don't wish this. I never, in wildest imaginations, you think you would lose your younger sibling in this manner. You know, it's life is very unpredictable, and that's kind of what I've learned. I couldn't control it. I learned how to manage grief uh, alone because my parents reside in Canada, so I only was there for the funeral. But then, when you're at the funeral, you're just processing. Your mind doesn't realize you're on autopilot, and it's later on that you hit with what really happened, what your body went through, the trauma, and it's not just trauma of losing your sibling, it's the trauma of watching your parents suffer what they have worked hard for and achieved, and what should be their golden years to enjoy, their children and grandchildren and happy things, and now they're mourning it as their youngest child. And it's a role reversal where instead of a parent, a child wrapping up a parent's life, a parent is wrapping a child's life. And it's a trauma repeated over and over again as we were closing up his house. And this is why the title comes in, it's his life interrupted. And in that aloneness the loneliness that I felt when I was here, because we lived in different parts of the world. So I didn't have this circle of grief, circle of protectors from grief, my friends or close family, people I grew up with, that I had to learn to manage it myself. And that prompted me to reach out to others and hear other people's stories. People connected with me because they went through something like that. And, and then there are two ways to, when you see a tragedy, yes, you can go, this is sucks, this life's, why me? Life's unfair. Why Manu? He didn't do anything. My parents didn't do anything wrong. And the other way is like, okay, this happened. I cannot change what has happened. I cannot alter the past. It is what it is. I have to make peace with it. What I can do is I can change the future, maybe save another life, maybe be a better, create a positive impact, that his death is not just into a statistic, but a change, and a change for something better. Yeah.
That's so powerful. And I I really, really love and respect and honor this this mission that you're on, because I think sometimes in dentistry, like as working in clinical practice for 10 years, you actually kind of underestimate sometimes the power that we have to change people's lives. Like we know we're helping people, we know that we're providing transformation and change and the beautiful smile, but there's something so much deeper than that when it comes to oral cancer detection. And so I would love for you to just share a little bit more on that. Like how how do you help people find this sooner? What was Manu's story in terms of finding out that he did have cancer?
Yeah, I really pay or tell people like, hey, you're a smoker, you see something, and I see my patients when I'm doing my exams. I look, touch, feel. I really do that head and neck exam. I ask them questions like, do you have a cough that's persistent? Do you have trouble swallowing? Do you have trouble moving any part of your body? You see anything in your mouth that hasn't healed? Whether it's healed or whether it's painful or not, but if a non-healing lesion has been persistent, get a biopsy. And with Manu, he had a lesion on the lateral border of his tongue, and he was seeing a dentist and a oral surgeon who thought it was lichen planus and put him on a prednisone. Um, and Manu, he showed me the lesion June of 2019. He was just about to turn 33 end of the month. And he said, hey, take a look. What do you think this is? It's been there for a while. It's hurting. And I showed it to 5 other surgeons locally, and everybody hands down said oral cancer, and didn't have a biopsy. And these are one of the things that I tell other dentists and doctors is when I lecture is don't treat without knowing what it is. Manu was given prednisone without a final biopsy of what the lesion was, and prednisone is an immunosuppressant, and perhaps that made it worse. I don't know, but it's a catch-22, right? We don't know what made it worse, and Manu got his wisdom teeth taken out, and the lesion still grew. I saw him in July that same year, and his tongue, half of it is brown, leathery, ulcerated. And I kind of gave him the big sister look like, are you kidding me right now? Why have you not biopsied this? And he couldn't talk. He couldn't eat certain foods. We went out for sushi, he wouldn't have the wasabi, little stuff like that. He's like, it really hurts. My ear hurts, my neck hurts. And I'm like, please get this biopsy. And it was stage 2 squamous cell carcinoma with lymph node involvement. And he had half his tongue resected, grafted. It was an 8-hour surgery, and the surgery went beautifully. However, he was not given chemoradiation. And 8 months later, just as COVID had started, he had another round of surgeries because the cancer had reappeared on his neck because the lymph nodes weren't removed fully. And he went through a chest CT, which showed a ground glass opaque lesion, and it wasn't biopsied because it was small in size. And later on, he celebrated his 34th birthday during radiation and chemo, and it was like a drive-by birthday in the middle of COVID. This is the end of 2020, June. And he did very well after chemoradiation. He did spectacular. Unfortunately, his CT scan showed that the lesion on his chest had grown 4 times the size. And eventually in December, he had failure. He was having trouble to breathe and a lot of heaviness. And they discovered that there was fluid in his lungs. The lesion never got biopsied because the fluid was positive for squamous cell carcinoma. And that's when I flew across without being vaccinated, with all the troubles of COVID. And I said, I've got to be there for him. And it was the last time I saw him alive. And death was this elephant in the room that we knew was present, but we didn't want to talk about it. And eventually, we spoke. He had other rounds of radiation. He had a chest board that he would drain about 1 liter of fluid a day. He was on palliative home care, pain management. A lot of his journey was alone because of his status in COVID. My parents would just drop him to the hospital. So the strength to undergo such extensive treatment with nobody around you to support you is very devastating. And that's kind of, when he went through chemoradiation during his 34th birthday, that's kind of when he walked away from dentistry and started writing and focusing on health. So throughout the end stages of his last few months, he was writing his journey. And when I had flown to December, he couldn't talk much, a sentence or two, and then fluid buildup would prevent him from speaking. So he's like, I really want this printed, whether, I'll keep writing as long as I can. Um, I want to keep writing. I don't want to publish it right now. I have time. I can continue this. And that was the only positive thing that he had looking forward, just writing his thoughts. And then unfortunately, he went in on a Friday, because he had a pulmonary embolism. He had a swelling in his leg, and they took him in. The next day, he was moved into hospice. And that's when I was told to come, and I was trying to get everything expedited on a Saturday night, Sunday morning. And so Sunday, I got everything set for traveling on Monday. And unfortunately, he passed away that Sunday night. It went very quickly, which I'm glad that he didn't suffer too much at the end. It's very hard to watch a loved one suffer. And so, but that was his journey. It was very quick, very aggressive. And so my whole focus is on, when I'm talking to other, like, don't focus on just the tooth. Oral care, is overall care. It's linked to systemic care. So really pay attention to a lesion, ask those questions. And I've had people reach out to me that, oh, because of your story, I'm paying more attention, I've diagnosed, or I have sent people for biopsies and they've gotten positive for cancer. So yeah, maybe this helps save a life.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that is not something that you'd ever expect to deal with in your young life and
Right.
in your
And
journey. And
yeah, and that's the whole point is Manu. When I told him, I'm like, this looks suspicious for cancer. And he's like, I can't have cancer. I'm 32. I'm in the prime of my life. He had a startup practice. And I think that part denial, part ego, part I'm young, cancer can't touch me. Those um, those fallacies need to be eliminated, that cancer can affect anybody. And we just have to be mindful of our bodies and get things checked out.
mhm. And I know, like, everybody that's listening to this, like myself included, I'm like thinking of a list of all the people that I love that I want them to like immediately go and just, get everything checked out. And I know your mission is going to impact a lot of lives. I want to talk a little bit about you in this process because I know that you've shared some of your story with me before. And something that I've noticed this last year, I had two deaths in my family. Both my grandmas passed away within 6 months of each other. And it was this very bizarre experience of, oh, wow, like when this happens, everything in your life kind of shifts, like it shuts down. Nothing gets people together or stops time more than death. And it's something that as a professional coach, I actually talk about it a lot because I want us to remember death. I want us to remember that this time is not unlimited, that every day we have a choice to do something that we love or that's meaningful or that we're aligned with. And if we remember that time is precious, that helps us have the sense of urgency around life. And so I do talk about it a lot, but it doesn't really prepare you to go through it. And you have no idea what you're going to face. And so watching both my parents bury their moms last year was very challenging. And there was a lot of beauty in the process. And one of the things that I noticed the most was that there was a sense of needing to slow down my own life. And as you know, and we were discussing before we got on the call, like we're on the roads all the time, speaking and building our businesses and doing all these things. And yet when life does this life thing, we all stop and we take a moment. And so I would love for you to just speak to the the ability for you to honor yourself during that process. There's a level of worthiness that it takes to really do the things that you need in order to heal, to give yourself space and time. And so I would love to hear like how did you do that and how did you give yourself that what you
Yeah,
needed?
I love that life do its life thing. First of all, I sympathize with you and offer my condolences to lose two grandparents. It's hard losing one. That's the circle of life, but two, it's very challenging on the family. And then it's for your parents, it's like who's supporting who, right? If they both
Mhm.
need support, they both need suffering losses. So yeah, I'm sure your family had a tough time there. And And the process of death, we're not, no one's getting out of this alive. We're all going to die. And I think Manu reflects on that too, is to give death that respect that it deserves, that not to live your life callously, but to live it with some fulfillment, to create something that will outlive you, to achieve immortality. We may not be here, but our deeds, our thoughts, what we have given to the society, whether it's in art or literature or science, or how we made somebody feel, that outlives us. And so to live each day with a purpose. And I think after Manu's death, you're right, it changes your perspective of life. It really defines, like, oh my gosh, now this person's gone, now what? Of all those monetary things that we may have yearned for, and nobody's taking anything behind. You think about, what do you talk about? It's the memories of what you did together and what you laughed about, or the dishes made or something. It's acts of service. And I think that's where my mind kind of shifted. Like, it definitely alters, like you said. I decided that I want to give back, and I have to do things that align with what I want to accomplish in life, how I want to practice, how much traveling I want to do. You mentioned traveling is tough, and you go, go, go all the time. It's spending that quality time with your family, taking time for yourself. I went, my husband says, you've gone for way too many massages this year. I'm like, you know what? I totally deserve it. I'm worthy of it. But it's these little things that bring you joy. And one of the biggest things for me is realizing that time is our most precious commodity. We can't refund it. We can't get it back. We can't exchange it. We can't go back in time. And so when I am seeing, where I practice, how much time difference it is, traveling time there is, how much time am I taking away from my kid, all of that factors into my practice. And how I choose to spend it and who I choose to spend it with. So I've had to say no to events because either I'm not in the right frame of mind, because I am going through grief, and grief is a process. It just doesn't end when Manu died, and that wasn't the end of it. I read a quote somewhere that the problem with grief is that sympathies tend to finish faster than the grief. Grief outlasts the sympathy. So phone calls of support and all kind of stop, and then you're left alone figuring it out for yourself. And so when I realized that I'm not in a time of frame of mind to attend something, or I'm not fully mentally there, I will say no. Or people who have not been there for me, if they're not there for my sorrows, they don't need to be there for my joys. So it's coming to that self-realization, which I should have done sooner, but life teaches you, and you learn to accept it.
Oh my gosh, I think that is like such a powerful lesson in itself for all of us that haven't gone through that trauma that you've been through, but to know and hear from your wisdom of giving yourself the space to say no when you're not in the right frame of mind. It doesn't, you don't need to judge your own grief. You don't need to have a timeline on your own
Yep.
healing. You just trust yourself, and you honor yourself. And that's part of feeling worthy of doing the things that you need to do in order to heal and to overcome, or to just feel better at any point. So I think that's just such a powerful lesson that I think we can all take back, no matter where we're at in our life.
Yeah, agreed. It's not being selfish. Realizing your self-worth is not saying that, oh, it's all about me and being selfish in that, but it's how you present to others and how you value others. You're there for another person, how you present yourself in your acts and your deeds. So there's more of a component than say, like, yeah, I'm not going to come here. I'm going to say no to hanging out with you, or I'm not going to see that patient because they're complaining all the time. It's okay to dismiss a patient. That doesn't that raises your, I'm sure we've all had them, that raises your stress level. You see them on the schedule, you're like, oh no. And it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You know, we're all feeding off of each other's energies, and you just want to bring, like, you know, how you're around certain people and you feel good. And if you're around certain people, you're like, that looks a little shady, or I don't feel comfortable. We're all exuding some kind of an aura. And, you know, just to create a little bit more positiveness in the world that we all needed. And we're all worthy of it.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned going through this?
Hmm. Oh, well, lots of things. I realized my strength in all of it. Um, you know, life doesn't come with like a handbook. It doesn't come with rules or regulations and a specific timeline, and not what you predict or what you plan your life to be. It takes a different course, and you need to be able to navigate through it, and it requires patience, and it requires some sort of wisdom which comes over time, and it requires strength. You know, life presents you with challenges you don't expect, and it's unpredictable. So strength, and that not all you get to pick your friends and not your family, and not all family has to be related by blood. I've had, you know, it really realizes what your value is in somebody else's life. And I've learned that lesson also, a little hard. But this is where it puts, you know, when push comes to shove, who's there picking you up?
Mm,
And you have to learn to pick yourself up and to give yourself space to heal. Nobody else is going to do for you. If you don't value yourself, that, you know, yes, life happened to me, but you know what? I can grow from it. I can learn from it. I'm going to get up and rise again. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. It's how many times you get up. And every time you fall, there'll be people picking you up and others pushing you down. It's get those people, get the right kind of people around you to help lift you up. Um, and it's realizing those little things. And so it's okay to sit down when you fall and be like, oh, this hurts really bad. And
mm,
I can't believe I tripped. I can't believe I took a stumble. But you know what? I'm gonna have to dust myself and try again.
oh my gosh. It just, I think all of this wisdom that you have is just a testament to how strong you are and how much you have just been resilient through all of this. And I just want to honor you for the work that you're doing and for the message that you're sharing and for the strength that you have to be able to talk about this, to be able to share, and to really honor your brother's life and make a difference in the world. So I want to finish this podcast. Our final question is sponsored by Care Credit, who has just been amazing in standing up to my mission to empower women in dentistry. And so the final question for today's podcast is more of a fill in the blank statement. And it is women are worthy of, and you finish the sentence.
Women are worthy of having it all.
I love it. Having it all. Thank you so much, Dr. Pearl. I am just so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that we met. How can my listeners get in contact with you if they, just want to ask you questions? How do they reach you?
Sure. So I have my website, which is parulduamakkar.com. And I'm on Instagram at Dua, D-U-A, good job. A little pun Manu invented, and I took it.
I love
So,
it.
so keep doing a good job, but it's do a good job on Instagram or my website, and it's got my email and a way to find me and reach out.
Amazing. And if you're listening to this while you're driving, if you don't have an opportunity to write that down, it is all in the show notes for you here. And please, if this episode resonated with you, I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people, a lot of women in dentistry, a lot of men in the dentistry. And thank you. Just keep sharing your message. And if if this resonated with any of your listeners, please go ahead and share it. And go ahead and go to Parul's Instagram, which I absolutely love the handle of, and give her some love for this podcast, for coming on, spending her time, sharing her story, being vulnerable. And thank you so much for being on the Clearly Worthy podcast.
Thank you for having me.